All right, culinary students, it is time for leavening agent experiment. So we are going to try to answer some questions about baking soda and baking powder. First things first though, on Canvas, you should have noticed that obviously there's this video, but then there should be a chart that shows up in your assignments. And I need you to have that up on your screen while you're watching the experiment so you can record your results and then be able to answer your questions at the bottom, because please note, this will be a test question. It makes a really good short answer essay question. Just heads up, ding, 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 hint, hint, hint. So definitely make sure you get some ideas written down, and we'll go through them together today. So I've got my pen ready to write results, and what I tried to do was I tried to set up the experiment in the way that the chart is set up. So I've got my baking soda, bottom of the chart, baking powder, top of the chart. I've got my water right here in this column, and then I've got my vinegar over here in this column, because that's what we're going to use for our acid today. So I am actually going to start in this bottom box where it says baking soda. So we're going to just work our way up around the chart in a clockwise fashion. So again, I'm starting with baking soda and water. That's what my little W is for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda, put it into the cup, and I am going to pour the water in. So I am looking and listening for any kind of reaction that takes place so I can record that on my chart. So here goes the water. And I have a couple spoons back here that I can use to stir. So I'm going to stir this up a little bit. And I'll bring it up to the screen so you can see. Huh. What are your thoughts? Do you think a reaction is taking place? Because I'm going to be honest with you, all it does really is settle down to the bottom. It's not really doing anything. It just looks like water with some baking soda down at the bottom. So I'm going to say there's no reaction taking place. This is not impressive. It's not doing anything. So on my chart, I'm going to look at my baking soda and water, and I'm just going to put down no reaction. So no reaction. Okay. So then I'm going to go up my chart, because remember, I'm going to work up and around clockwise. So now I'm going to do baking powder and water, and we're going to see if there's any reaction that takes place here. So I'm going to measure out my 1/4 of a teaspoon. I'm going to put that into the cup. All right, and then I'm going to pour the water in, and what I'll do is I'll move this up so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. So we're going to do water with baking powder. I'm going to stir, whoops, wrong one. I'm going to stir this up just a little bit. And then I'll bring it up so you can see it. Huh. Interesting. If I am looking closely, this is all staying cloudy. It's not separating out like the baking soda and water did. So the fact that this is staying cloudy and it's staying suspended, that's different, and that is a reaction. Maybe not very impressive, but it's a reaction none the least. So I am also noticing too, there's a couple little bubbles, like they're teeny tiny bubbles. I don't know if you'd be able to see that. It's kind of hard with the video, but there are a few little bubbles happening. So there's clearly some kind of a reaction taking place. So on my chart, what I'm going to say then for baking powder and water, yeah, there's a reaction. So I'm going to say yes, there is a reaction that took place. Okay, so now I'm going to move across my chart to the baking powder and vinegar. So now we're going to start using this acid. So I'll move this a little bit. Hopefully you'll be able to see this cup here. So I'm going to measure out my 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, put it into the cup, and I'm going to add in my vinegar. So we're going to look and listen to see if we notice a reaction. So I'm hoping you can hear, but also look at, there's like little bubbles popping up. There's little bubbles down here. It's making a sound kind of like pop makes when you first open up those bottles, like that fizziness. And if you can see, there's like this little carbon dioxide gas that comes off every once in a while too. So if I'm thinking of vinegar with baking powder, I'm hoping you know the answer. Is there a reaction or not? And the clear answer would be, yeah, there's a reaction, okay? So we're gonna come back to our paper, and I'm looking at baking powder and vinegar, and I'm gonna put yes, there's a reaction. All right, so that leaves our last experiment, which is going to be the vinegar with some baking soda. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure out my 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. I'm going to put it into the cup, and I'm going to pour this in and look and listen to see if anything happens. Oh. So again, there's kind of that pop fizzing noise. There's the bubbles. They're rising up to the surface. So clearly with baking soda and vinegar, we have a reaction there too. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put yes for that one. And if you're curious, if any of you ever did volcano experiments for science when you were little, this is usually how you did it, was with some baking soda and vinegar. So let's go over to our chart then, and let's talk through what it is that we're noticing. So baking powder, it reacted with the water and it reacted with the vinegar. Baking soda, no reaction with water, but yes, a reaction with the vinegar. So let's go down and record our results. So in order for baking powder to have a reaction in a baked good, what kind of liquid must it have? Well, it reacted with the water. It reacted with something that was acidic. It reacted with both. So if I was to make my conclusion, I'm going to say baking powder, it reacts with any liquid we're putting it with. So on my paper, I could record and say any liquid. So any liquid that's present, there's going to be a reaction with the baking powder. Going to this next one, in order for baking soda to have a reaction in a baked good, what kind of liquid must it have? Well, water, there was no reaction, but vinegar, there was a reaction. And vinegar, remember, was our acid. So what kind of liquid? No to water, yes to acid. So baking soda, it needs an acidic liquid, something that has some kind of acidic property to it to get it to have a reaction. So any acidic liquid would work. Now I want to do a follow-up question. When we look at these reaction results, would it be a fair statement of me to say that baking powder and baking soda are the same thing? And your answer should be no, they are not the same thing. We know this because each is needing something different for a reaction. We also know this because think back to our very first unit. Which one of the two do we not put on a grease fire? Baking powder. Baking powder goes pow in our face. We don't want that. Baking soda, soda safe, soda safe, soda safe, soda safe. Remember our little ways to remember this. So the fact that we can use one on a fire and one we would never use on a fire tells us there's something different going on. Now, here's the difference. When I look at baking soda, it is made of bisodium carbonate. It's very, very plain stuff. It's kind of like base stuff. It's not going to do a whole lot on its own. It needs some extra help, hence it needs the acidic liquid. Baking powder is bisodium carbonate, but it also has a dry acid in with it. Oh, that's why it can work with any liquid, because there's already acid in the baking powder. It is also the reason why we never, ever, ever use baking powder on a fire, because remember, acid and fire, yeah, those are two things we don't want to put together because bad things will result. But in the case of a liquid, That's why we can use any liquid we want, because the acid is already there. So these are our findings. Try to store this little nugget of information into your heads when we get to our test, but also consider these things when we're making our quick breads, any kind of baked goods in your future. It does make a difference of which one you're using. You should not substitute one out for the other because they are needing different things. So be sure to follow those recipes so you can get the best product quality results possible.